Okay. 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 So let's see. Today we're continuing with Deborah and Barak, and yeah. So last time we were talking about Achan or Akan, and also how they, or not they, but Joshua, about Joshua and his conquest of the city of Ai, and there's a guy named Daniel W. or David W. Daniels on YouTube, and he has one video that talks about what the walls of Jericho would have looked like, and I think he makes a pretty convincing case because he needed, like, he was writing some sort of a book or a magazine or something, and he needed the picture, so he got the guy to he did some of the research so he can give him an accurate picture of, like, this is what I need you to draw. So I think his name is David W. Daniels, and I think he makes a pretty good case. Okay, so Deborah and Barak. So we're continuing with, like, the Judges, chapters 2 through 5. Of course, they're worshiping a statue of Baal. The Israelites are, because they've adopted the ways of the Canaanites. Many Israelites worshiping Baal or Baal. Many Israelites began to worship Baal, the Canaanite rain god, preferring him to the god of. And the thing is that if you watch one of our YouTube videos for the Sunday sermons, we did a segment on the similarities between Baal, Moloch, and I think it's Hathor, one of the Egyptian goddesses. And all that to say, it seems like they came out of a Ham's line. So many Israelites began to worship Baal, the Canaanite rain god, preferring him to the God of Abraham and Moses. Though they thought Baal would help them by sending, rain for their crops. And often the way this would work is they would need to do some sort of human sacrifice, or human sacrifice, and or have, like, orgies and stuff in front of, like, the statue or the temple where that statue was. So the Israelites settled in Canaan, and many of them began to worship the local gods, the Canaanite deities. God punished them for this by allowing the Canaanite raiders to attack the Israelites. Then, to save the Israelites, God gave them a series of leaders called judges who tried to make the people keep God's laws. Deborah, a famous prophetess, was the only female judge. Because God spoke through her, the Israelites asked her to sort out their quarrels. She held court beneath a tree called the Palm of Deborah, to help the Israelites defeat the Canaanites. Deborah sent for Barak, a great Israelite commander. Yeah, and what we want to notice here is she's a female judge, but she still understands the order of creation, so she's working with a man, even though she's the prophetess. So, a comment I have to make about our modern society then is because we're so, you could say, brainwashed from this feminism and stuff like that, we forget God actually has a creation order. And even when the women are gifted with gifts, they don't deviate from the order of God, the creation order of God. So that's how you know somebody understands what their gift is about. And you could say, like, these people actually understand their I don't want to say position, but, like, they understand where they are situated in life and why God situated them in that situation. If I can make a broad statement out of it. And that's because they understand God's order. And it's because they understand God's order they don't deviate even when they're gifted with things that the human tendency is to abuse, to maybe get more power out of it. They understand there's a restraint that they have to follow, um, a restraint on their own will, refraining from the things they would like to abuse or transgress in what God had limited, because they understand there's an order to the universe, and that's the point. And you can then see why she's a judge, right? Because despite being a prophetess, she understands the order of creation, so she doesn't work by herself. The things that God tells her, she relays that to a man commander of an army, and it's the man that does the work, or does the you could say execution of the work. And we'll get to more of this probably. Let me see. Maybe during Solomon, or maybe during Solomon, and then definitely in the New Testament when Paul talks about the order of God being God, Christ, man, woman, and he's not talking about, and that order is obvious. He's not talking about some kind of you know because if I go into this route, that is going to take too long to just. So there's an order, and that order is there because it pleased, in God's infinite wisdom, it pleased God to set that kind of order in order to display His holiness. So what we don't want to do is we don't want to put more authority where it doesn't belong, and at the same time, we don't want to take away authority where it shouldn't be taken away from. And then simultaneously, we don't want to add value to something that isn't supposed to have extra value of some sort or priority of some sort, and we don't want to take away priority or value where it shouldn't be taken away. So the point of the creation order and then the God, Christ, man, woman order that Paul is talking about, it's not about this. You might say, like, it's not about the feminist trap where somehow women and men are not equal to each other, because that's such a vague language that it doesn't get across the point of that order. The point of that order is to display God's holiness. So that's the angle of it. The order of God here is about God's holiness, not about whether or not who's equal or not equal. That's like so beside the point. Anyway, so yeah, we can't talk about it. I mean, we can talk about it here, but it's we need to build up to it. Is the thing. So we'll build up to it. So suffice to say here, Deborah is a judge because she understands that order of God. So despite being a prophetess, despite God speaking to her in visions and dreams, and then telling her to, tell Barak these things, she doesn't deviate away from that because she understands she's a woman. And I know that's going to offend a lot of feminists, but think about why she was chosen to be a judge, despite being a woman. And then you'll see she understands the order of God. All judges understand the order of God. And the judges that don't understand the order of God, but were selected by God to be judges, they have very negative impact on Israel. And we'll talk about, like I said, we have to sort of like build this because you can't explain it in like one session here. So you take a look at Samson. He's a Nazarite. That's a type of order. And we're not talking about a school here. We're talking about an order as in like there are certain things that Nazarites are supposed to be doing and not supposed to be doing. And then Samson gave up. He went against that order of God, which is why, he kind of failed. And then at the end, he asked for God's grace, God's mercy, and then God restored in order to fulfill what he was originally supposed to do as a judge. But yeah, again, I can't get everything in here because there's just too much context, too much. So we got to build up to it. So she held court beneath a tree called Palm of Deborah to help the Israelites. Deborah sent for Barak, the great commander in Israel. The Israelites attacked the Canaanites. So Barak refuses to go without Deborah. And this is important here because Barak also understands, despite being a woman, if the word, and in the Acts when Philip's, I think it's Philip's, two daughters are filled with the Holy Spirit and they become prophetesses. And that's a fulfillment of Joel, I think Joel 2 something. It's not without precedent. It actually goes back to not only Judges but any other time where like Sarah actually, where they have a greater faith or greater they had basically have greater faith than the men around them, and then it's through their faith that the men learn, oh, this is what I'm supposed to be doing, which is exactly going back to Eve, which is that was her purpose. Is to Adam, he had this his tendency was toward holiness, but he had this weakness, and it was Eve's responsibility to hold Adam accountable, right? To be the priest of God, say, hey Adam, I'm weaker than you. So in to a great degree, you're the one that has to teach me the word of God and be responsible for my receiving the same blessing as you. Like you're responsible for me receiving your blessing. And Eve was supposed to be the catalyst to help remind Adam of that. And that carries all the way to, people like Deborah, that carries all the way to people like Esther, that carries all the people like Sarah, Anyway, we're getting way ahead of ourselves, and it's just too much information to cram all at once. Suffice to say, Deborah, she's the judge because she understands order. Or she's a successful judge because she's a successful judge which God appointed because she understands order. Unlike some of the other judges who maybe started out well, but, like Japheth, seemed like a guy who understood. We're going to talk about him soon probably, but yeah, he sacrifices his daughter, right? So at no point, not at no point, but he committed so he, first of all, he sinned against God by vowing to sacrifice his daughter, right? Saying, I'm going to vow, whoever comes throughout that door first to meet me, I'm going to sacrifice. You can't really make that kind of a vow if you understand. I mean, we understand the situation, but that kind of thing, that kind of vow is something Japheth is not supposed to, if he's a proper judge, he's not supposed to be making those kinds of vows to God. But he did. And then he then went to a second sin by going through with that vow instead of realizing that he sinned against God and saying, this is like two wrongs don't make a right. We'll get to Japheth a little bit later, but yeah. So chapter 2, verse 16. Then the Lord raised up judges who saved them. The word judge is translated from the Hebrew word shofet, meaning someone who decides. Shofet, judge, questions the law, but were also military leaders. Chapter 4, verse 9, the Lord will deliver Sisera into the hands of a woman. Deborah tells Barak that because he wanted a woman to go into battle with him, he will also lose the honor of capturing the enemy commander to a woman. And this incident is the Sisera guy. He gets killed by a woman by getting a stake through her temple or to his temple. And the description of it is actually, you hungry?
I ate, but
Oh, it's up to you. You want to play?
maybe later.
Okay.
Did you eat?
Oh yeah, I already ate.
Are you speaking to someone? Are you speaking to someone?
Yeah, the internet.
Oh,
Because I'm always recording it,
oh, okay, guys.
so everything's always online.
Okay, guys.
There was one couple that actually are looking for they were looking for a church, and they said they found us through our website, the YouTube website.
Okay,
Yeah, so
nice.
and we'll close that door.
Wow, they installed the camera. Interesting.
But I can't see it.
Oh,
I'm behind here. I asked them if they could put that up here, but I guess they had other, other, or even up there. But
I see. What if there was a mirror over there that would reflect on this one?
yeah, but that'd be you would need like a magnifying mirror or something, That's too far, yeah. I need one of those car mirrors.
Oh yeah. one of those round ones.
But it wouldn't be the same though. You know what I
It
mean?
will not be the same reflection.
It wouldn't be the same as if that was like over here.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I gotcha.
All right. So where were we? Oh yeah, second page of the thing for Deborah.
What page again?
Second page of after Deborah.
Let me check.
So yeah, I was just talking about
Where's Deborah?
oh yeah, so yeah.
Joshua. Yeah.
So
Joshua.
Deborah is a proper judge. And I was talking about how like she's a proper judge because
Right.
despite God giving her visions and talking to her through visions and dreams, she's not the one that actually does the work. She actually uses a guy named Barak. And the point was she's a proper judge because she understands the creation order, which is it used to be God, Adam, Eve. But in the New Testament, after the resurrection of Jesus Christ, it's God, Christ, man, woman. Deborah understood that, which is why she's a proper judge.
I don't understand.
So if she wasn't a proper judge, she would be going against that order, meaning she would be. So she's like, I received. So in other words, she restrained her. You know, in our feminism sort of like drowning culture, this doesn't make sense to us because we're like, what's the difference between Deborah, God working through Deborah, and then like a man? It should be the same as the way we phrase it, but it's not. There is an order to the universe, and that order has nothing to do with equity. That order has to do with displaying God's holiness. So once we start talking about equity, it's like the point is lost, you know? Yeah, so Deborah understands like she's not keeping this order because she's trying to be subservient or something. She's keeping this order because the order displays God's glory. It displays God's holiness, you know, in a visible manner. And once what I was trying to say is like in our feminism drowning culture, we always talk about equity when we talk about these things. And that loses the point because once we start talking about who's equal, who's not equal, weaker, not weaker, once we start getting into that, which is like way beyond the point, then we lose out what Deborah was trying to do, which was Deborah was trying to express God's holiness into this world, into creation, by keeping that creation order. That's the point. She was trying, in other words, like she was, you know, she had the mindset of a priest trying to express God's holiness into this world.
Okay.
But yeah, trying to describe why that order, that's like a separate lecture series actually, you know what I mean? It's not enough to cover in like a Bible study. So yeah, so I just said to the everybody like, all right, we'll talk about that later, but we have to build up to it because we can't just talk about everything here. So yeah, that's that. And then Sisera says, I'm not gonna go, you know, I mean, I don't that's what that I mean I don't know if
Deborah tells Barak that because he wanted a woman to go into battle with him,
which is Deborah,
he will also lose the honor in capturing the enemy commander.
to a woman.
Yeah.
Well,
The Lord will deliver Sisera into the hands of a woman. So Sisera is the Canaanite, right?
yeah.
So Deborah tells Barak that because he is what? Sisera?
Yeah.
Wanted a woman.
No, Barak.
Oh, Barak wanted a woman to go into the battle with him. He will also lose the honor of capturing the enemy commander. Okay, got it. I got it. So Deborah, so Barak wanted Deborah to come, but Deborah explained to him that
It's not good. Yeah, you're supposed to go there.
good.
Yeah.
Interesting. And Deborah means bee in Hebrew.
Yeah. I mean, her name. I mean, that's sort of like secondary. I mean, it can be important to the because in the Hebrew narratives, like it's the names, they can be important, but you don't have to understand the name to know what's going on. So yeah, the point is Deborah is set up as just because God is like communicating directly to her, like through visions and dreams. But Deborah doesn't do the actual work because she's trying to keep the creation order, which is
She's not the main character.
Yeah.
She's just serving.
Yeah. In other words, like even so, this is so in my mind, this sort of like goes back to the Adam and Eve story, which is Eve's purpose was to hold Adam accountable for his faith, and that's why God created Adam. God created Eve because she's supposed to be a fit help or a help meet or a helper that's fit for him, right? So Paul even says the woman was made for man, but he's not talking about equity here when he says the woman was made for man. He's talking about her function. What was her purpose? And it's to hold the man accountable, and the Adam, by receiving God's blessings, by receiving that inheritance of God, he's supposed to pass that along to Eve as well. So that was his responsibility, to make sure Eve had the faith, Eve had the theological knowledge of who God is, so that by faith, both of them can receive the blessing that Adam received as the firstborn. So Eve is supposed to hold him accountable. Well, that's what Deborah is doing. Deborah is trying to hold Barak accountable because he's the commander of the army, right? So it's Barak that's supposed to go out and fight there. But Barak is like, instead of trusting in, you can say, instead of putting his trust in God, he's sort of like treating Deborah as like an Ark of the Covenant, kind of like this emblem thing.
Like lucky charm
to like bring with him to win. And Deborah's like, well, because you did that, your honor is going to be given to this woman. And do you have your Bible with you? This is actually a pretty funny story. Okay. And Sisera is the leader of the Canaanite army that you're supposed to destroy. So Joshua's Judges chapter 4.
But the worst, somebody is she busy today?
Yeah. And I told her from the beginning, like, I'm the one doing the pastoring, so she has no requirement whatsoever to show up to like help me pastor. She can show up as like a sort of like a congregation member, like to partake, but she's not here to help me.
Gotcha.
Okay, so verse 17 from chapter 4. So Sisera lost, and Barak is chasing after Sisera. And so this is Judges chapter 4, verse 17. Sisera fled away on his feet to the tent of Jael, the wife of Heber, the Kenite, for there was peace between the Jabin, the king of Hazor, and the house of Heber, the Kenite. Jael went to meet Sisera and said to him, "Turn in, my lord, turn in to me. Fear not." And when he had turned into her tent, she covered him with a mantle. And she said, "Give me, I pray thee, a little water to drink, for I am thirsty." And she opened a bottle of milk and gave him to drink and covered him.
Sisera, right?
Yeah.
Where are we? Chapter 4?
4, verse 17 through 20 right now. And again he said to her, "Stand in the door of the tent. It shall be when any man does come and inquire from you, say, 'Is any man here?' Then you shall say, 'No.' So watch out the door while I take a nap." Then Jael, Heber's wife, took a nail of the tent and took a hammer in the hand and went softly to him and smote the nail to his temples and fastened it to the ground. So she killed him with a tent nail, and it's like a stake, and drove it through his face, basically.
Why?
To kill him, because he's the Canaanite king, or not king, but like the
battle, Barak's army killed all the Canaanites except Sisera, ran away. He reached the tent of a woman called Jael, who offered him shelter. But Jael's tribe was friendly with the Israelites, and while Sisera slept, she killed him. In this way, the words of Deborah came true.
Yeah, so that Barak wasn't the one who got the honor; it was the woman.
Deborah tells Barak that because he wanted a woman to. Okay, so in the end, Deborah did not go to Barak.
She followed Barak to the war, but she didn't fight.
Oh, so she did.
She followed him because he was like, "I need you to follow me," and then
because he was thinking of refuse.
Yeah.
But she
told him because
she told him that if you
because you're not trusting in God because
that the honor of killing Sisera is going to go to a woman,
right?
And it happened.
Yeah, because he wanted a woman, Deborah, to come with him, like sort of like a lucky charm thing,
like an assurance.
Yeah.
But I thought that Deborah said no, I must stay.
No.
I guess not.
Yeah.
So she said, "Well, I'll go with you,
Right.
but then the honor is not going to be a woman,
Right.
and
It's gonna give it to a woman, not you.
and it happened to be
Yeah.
Jael.
Jael. Yeah.
Mm.
So the interesting
So on that day, God subdued Jabin, the king of Canaan, for the people of Israel, and the hand of the people of Israel was sword of Moses.
But there, it's a funny description of the way she's
Wait,
treating.
So after Sisera died,
Mhm.
then they got the hold of the king.
Yeah.
And they what? They just
Yeah, killed
suffocated him.
Yeah.
They just kept on pressing him until what? He died.
No. Yeah. So they basically Barak was you can say like the captain of the Israel army. Sisera was the captain of the whatever army, Canaan army,
Yeah.
and then
So it says
they
"And
killed
the hand of
Sisera,
the
yeah, and then they
people
just
of
killed the
Israel
Canaanite.
pressed harder and harder against Jabin the king
Right.
until they destroyed Jabin king. What does that mean? Hand.
Like pressing harder just means their army now couldn't stand. Yeah, and
okay.
they kept being pressed back until the king was killed.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. So the funny story here starts in verse 18.
I see.
So Jael went out to meet Sisera,
Mm.
right? Because he thought she was a friendly,
Mm.
because there was peace between those two. But she actually went to kill him. So he went in, and then at verse 18 at the end, she covered him with a mantle.
Mm.
Mantle is like a blanket
Yes.
kind of thing,
Yes.
sort of like, yeah. So she wrapped him up, kind of like, and he goes, "Could you give me a little water?" And she gives him like a little milk to drink. What's that the imagery of?
Baby.
Yeah. She treated him like a little baby right now. He's like, "Oh, I'm so tired." She's like, "Oh, come on, little baby. Here's your little blanket. Oh, I'm so thirsty. Oh, here's a little milk for you."
Yeah.
That's how it's being described right now.
So
So the Jewish people who are reading it at that time, they would immediately understand like he's being treated like a baby. Yeah.
well, he doesn't realize it.
Yeah. So he doesn't realize he's being like treated like he's gonna be killed. But the Jewish readers at that time who was reading it would have known, oh, like, she's treating him like a baby to get his trust, and then trying to get him to sleep. And that's what she's doing, trying to get this guy to sleep like a baby so that she can.
Lullaby baby, right?
Yeah.
I see. But Jael, the wife of Heber, took a tent peg and took a hammer in her hand.
Mm-hmm.
Then she went softly to him and drove the peg into his temple and went down into the ground while he was lying fast asleep for weariness. Okay, so he was basically tired.
Yeah, from being chased. Yeah. So he was
He had
tired.
no energy.
Yeah, and then
he just conked out.
Yeah, and then he's like
He was killed.
trying to find out any allies that would like take him in. I mean, they weren't allies. It was just there was peace between them, but they weren't allies.
So I guess he was desperate too.
Yeah.
He needed
some sort of, yeah. And then he thought she was an ally, and then she's treating him like this. She's coddling him and stuff. So he's like, "Oh, this must be a safe haven for me or something."
Oh man, that's very interesting.
So that's why, like, when you actually like read the Bible, there's these imagery that like we sort of just like pass over unless you sort of like stop to think about like what are they describing here,
So trying to put a baby to sleep.
Yeah, is what she's doing. That's why he's like, "I'm thirsty. Can I get some water?" She goes like, "Here's a little milk for you. Are you warm in your blanket?"
Bam.
Yeah. Just killed him right off.
That is super interesting.
Yeah.
There's a lot of metaphors.
Yeah.
Tons of metaphors.
Like.
But in the end, what Deborah said became true.
Yeah, and that's the point.
Barak did not kill him.
Yeah.
It was someone else.
Right.
Very
and again, yeah, and the focus here that I want to make here is we can't look at this from our post-feminism worldview, because then you miss the point. Deborah was trying to show Barak this order here, So the whole point of Judges is to let the reader know there was a point in Israelite history where the people had no like king, is what the Judges person said, and it says because there was no king, everybody did what was right in their own eyes, right? And to us, it seems like, so if you take it at face value, it seems like the Judges writer is saying, if we only had a king, then everybody would be righteous and doing what's right and good in God's sight. That seems to be what the Judges writer is saying. But then when you actually read through Judges and then through the entire Kings Chronicles section, we find out all the kings are corrupt as well. So, and there's a disagreement, there's a debate in the Reformed about this, but I think the Judge guy was being ironic or sarcastic, meaning like because I think what the Judges guy was doing was, I think his audience was like, his audience is a later kingdom of like the King's period, and I think, or at least the editors were, and they were trying to make the point like, no matter how good your human king is, no matter like somebody like David, somebody like Josiah, unless God is your king, you're gonna have this everybody doing their own, what they think is own right in their own eyes constantly. And I think that he was making a sarcastic point by saying, we had no king, which is why everybody did what they did in their own eyes.
I see. Got it.
And yeah, I hope so. Now, as we're talking about the Judges period, like a lot of this will start making sense. And then why, when the people asked God, like, we want a king like the other nations, why God said, okay, but I'm warning you, this is not, gonna end well for you.
So, yeah, that's really interesting.
Right? Otherwise, if the Judges, writer, or the editors were not being sarcastic, it doesn't make sense why they're describing all these things that are going wrong, and they attribute it to saying it was because there was no king that they did all this, right?
Yeah.
When later we know, like, it's because of the king that Israel fell, Okay, Gideon, Judges chapter 6-7. Gideon was a young Israelite who lived in Ophrah, a settlement in Canaan. At the time, the Israelites had turned away from God and were worshiping other gods, namely the Canaanite deities. To punish them, God allowed Midianites from Arabia to invade the land. The Israelites suffered under the Midianites, crying out to God for help. God answered their prayers by sending an angel to Gideon. The angel told Gideon God was with him and that he was a mighty warrior who would save Israel. Under God's guidance and protection, Gideon destroyed the Israelite altars and false gods and led his people to victory.
So this is after Sisera's death.
Yeah, so after Sisera's death, and Judges also is a cycle. So the Israelites fall, they reject God and start worshiping the Canaanite deities, and then God punishes them. And this is actually pretty important. God uses the nations around them to punish Israel.
Right. Like Babylon.
Yeah, but the thing is, they punish Israel with nations that are also going to be punished. It's like sort of like a weird.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Because, so the idea is
because the Babylons got defeated.
Yeah, so like, and it's like the way God works is kind of it's something to think about. So every nation actually has, let's say, a threshold. It's all different though. I mean, on the one hand, it's all the same, but on the other hand, because the nation, so every nation, it's the same because every nation has a certain threshold. But certain nations' threshold is one way, and another nation's threshold is another way. And in God's mind, comparatively speaking, the nation that has the less threshold, God uses to punish the nations that did meet that wrath threshold. Does that make sense? So God uses Israelites to defeat the Canaanites,
right,
because the Canaanites reached that wrath threshold. So God uses Israel as a rod to punish them.
Right.
Then when the Israelites start getting that threshold, when they reach that threshold, God uses the nations around them to punish Israel, right? But then when their threshold gets high, God uses the Israelites by redeeming them and then punishing that nation.
Right.
So it's like this.
So it's like Israel gets defeated, Israel wins.
Yeah.
Gets defeated again and wins.
Yeah. So they turn to God, right? So that threshold is now low. It's gone.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds like us.
Yeah. So it goes down, and then this other nation who's the one that defeated Israel before, their, you could say, wickedness threshold starts going up, and then when that time comes, that it's like at that wrath threshold level, God uses the Israelites as the rod to like punish them, and if not the Israelites, like other nations. So we're gonna see a lot of that in Kings, where like, God uses the other nations to punish other nations, and then use that to punish Israelites, and they use the Israelites to punish those other nations, and there's just like constant, punishment, because God is pouring out His wrath on those nations, and He's using the other nations to punish, and that's because God said He's never going to flood the entire world again. See, so He said He's never going to use the water as a rod to like punish everything. So what he does is he uses people or nations, because he said to Noah, like, if somebody kills, the image bearer, then he himself is going to be killed by image bearers, and that's sort of like the precedent, like the law, the human law that God set, and he's working with that. But anyway, that's way later. But we start to see that here in the Judges cycles. So the angel visits upon Gideon was under a shade of oak tree. Gideon brought him an offering of bread and meat, which the angel caused to burst into flames. Gideon knew the angel that this was a sign that he's been visited by an angel. So Asherah was the Canaanite goddess, a Canaanite mother goddess. Asherah is actually not only a mother goddess, but she's the partner of Baal.
Oh.
So they're supposed to actually worship together. Asherah poles were made of wood. Following the angel's instructions, Gideon tore down the stone altars that his father had built to the god Baal. Taking an axe, then he chopped down the wooden pole dedicated to Asherah, and Gideon replaced these with an altar to God. And it doesn't mention it here, but so the way Gideon God actually commands Gideon, so you're going to be a judge, you're going to rescue Israel, and Gideon's unsure about whether or not God actually called him. So he actually tests God. He goes, okay, God, if it's really you, I'm going to put this water bottle. It was like an animal skin water bottle at that time. You might have heard this before, but I'm going to put this outside. And then if you're really calling me, then let there be dew everywhere. In Israel, like, dew is kind of, it's the normal setting, except for the water bottle. And God did that. And then God tested God again. He's like, okay, I just want to make sure this time, let there only be dew on the water bottle and nowhere else. And then the second day, God did that as well. And that's how,
They don't mention it.
Yeah, here they don't. But it, if you want to read it, it's
So what's the purpose of that?
So in the New Testament, actually not in the New Testament, in the Old Testament, there's only one time that God says we're allowed to test God, and that's through tithing.
That's what?
Tithing. Tithing is the only.
Tithing?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
So.
Oh, you mean tithe, and then God will.
Yeah, God actually says, like, so, God is
fill it back in or whatever.
Yeah, so he actually makes a promise. He says, I want you to test if you can't believe who I am.
Right.
If you can't believe who I am, I want you to test me. Tithe, and I'll give you these things.
Right.
I'll make sure these things come to pass. And if it doesn't come to pass, so be it. Right? God actually says, like, test me on this. But that's the only instance where God says, test me on this. Everything else, we're not supposed to test God. We're supposed to do it by faith.
Right.
In fact, that God actually says we're not supposed to test. Yeah. What Gideon is doing here is not right. It's actually a sin because he's testing God.
Yeah.
But despite it being not right, God accommodates himself to Gideon because God wants Gideon to have faith. That's why he's accommodating himself. He's not saying, Gideon, you're sinning. He is. But so you can sort of look at this time, because of the state of Israel, because of, like, what God hasn't revealed at that time, God is willing to accommodate himself to Gideon's testing, if that makes sense.
I see.
Because God hasn't revealed to Gideon, or not Gideon, but the Israelites fully, I'm not a God to be tested, and So in order for God to give Gideon that faith, he actually accommodates Gideon. So, and that's a very important point, because later on, God accommodates the Israelites to give them a king, despite knowing that they're going to fail because of the kings, right? And it's God's way of saying you have no excuse when you fail.
Okay.
It's God's way of saying that, because some people have this idea like, oh God, but if this happened, then it wouldn't have failed, or so isn't it kind of your fault? Because, like, sinners have a tendency to blame God like this. So what God does, he accommodates himself to us so that when things fail, we have no excuse, right? Because so God shows him this evidence twice, and which is why so some people then in modern times, some people use this to say this is why it's okay to ask God for signs. No, it's not, because that's testing God. So we no longer ask God for signs. We see the signs that God gave already in the Bible and say, I believe that sign. That's the proper orderly way of having a faith. Yeah, so what happens with Gideon? Night attack. So Gideon, so after this test, Gideon gathered an Israelite army. Although thousands, actually 10,000s of men wanted to join him, God told him to take only 300. So do you know the story about this section of it? It's where first, God says something like, those who are afraid, turn back. So like more than 10,000 people gathered. And then God's like, this is too many people. Send some people back by saying, if you're afraid, go back to your home. So then it's like, half the people left. And then God's like, this is still too many people. And there's some other thing. There's a
10,000 came and he said,
I forgot the exact
"You're
number.
afraid,
It's actually
leave and go back," and then 5,000 left.
let's see, Judges chapter 7. Let's get the actual numbers here. But it's a pretty interesting way of so this is verse 2 from chapter 7. In case they say, from our own strength, or my hand has saved me, God says, send them back. Proclaim to the ears of the people, saying, whosoever is fearful and afraid, let him return and depart. And there returned the people 20 and 2,000. So 22,000 people left, and there remained 10,000. And the Lord said unto Gideon, the people are yet too many. Bring them down to the water, and I will try them or test them for thee there. It shall be that of whom I say to thee, they shall go with thee. The same shall go with thee, and whoever say unto thee, they shall not go with thee, they shall not go down. So he brought the people down to that water, and the Lord said to Gideon, everyone that laps the water with his tongue, as a dog laps, he shall set. You shall say to him, shalt thou set by himself. Likewise, everyone that bows upon his knees to drink. So, the test was you get them to the water, and then if they lap the dog, if they lap by the raising of the hand and stuff like this, is those guys can stay. But the guys who kneeled before the water and they drank from the water, send them back, because that means they're used to kneeling before like the idols and stuff. Yeah, so that's
whose idea was this?
God's idea.
Okay.
So it's like because they're comfortable kneeling before idols. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So God's like, we're not gonna have idol worshippers here.
Right.
Yeah. So he sends them back.
And only 300 remains.
Yeah, and those are the 300 of the guys that were like, cup their hands to drink it. And the wrong interpretation is, so this actually comes from like maybe the Korean culture or something, but the idea is people who were lapping were like, watchful people. And it was the watchful people that God took, is what they say. That doesn't make any sense. Like God didn't take them because the whole point of getting rid of these people is so they can't say it's because of our strength that God saved us. Yeah. So it wouldn't make sense why God would save those that are like skillful and you know what I mean? That doesn't make any sense.
Same thing with the wall collapsing, right?
Yeah. And the idea is anytime God thinks these people are going to say our numbers saved us or our strength saved us, God says that's too many people. Get rid of them. I only need a certain amount of people who know it's by my grace only that this happens or that happens. Understood. But anyway, so 300 people. When the 300 people, so the noise. So they had like a urn. Actually, so Gideon gathered Israel army, although thousands of men wanted to join in. God told him to take only 300. With these men, Gideon attacked the Midianite camp at night. They made a loud noise by smashing empty jars and blowing on trumpets and raising their torches. This made the Midianites panic and flee. So that's how we know it's definitely not their strength, right? They're making all these like loud breaking noises, and then there's like all this fire, right? And then there's all this like trumpet blowing noise. So the guys are like, "What's going on? Alien invasion or something?" Right? And they start like killing each other. Oh yeah, and these are the rooms.
Sleeping.
Yeah. So they got up and they're like, we're being attacked, and they start killing each other, basically. Yeah.
Interesting.
And yeah, they actually discovered the site. That's the other thing. So they discovered where that happened, Megiddo. Yeah. Samson, Judges chapter 13, 14. After the death of Gideon. Oh, actually, any questions or after the death of Gideon, who led the Israelites to victory against the Midianites, the Israelites won. So this is after then Gideon, and I guess this one, because it's for kids, it sort of like leaves off the bad stories afterwards. After Gideon became successful, so after Gideon defeated the Canaanite army, the Israelites decided to make him sort of like king-like. So it was really, and he was like, "Oh, I'm not worthy to be king, so you don't have to, right?" But he tried to get his kids to rule instead of him.
Okay.
But it's the judges that are chosen by God that's supposed to rule, not our own. And Gideon got greedy there, so he wanted his kids to kind of rule. Yeah.
And then what happened?
He's like the prototype of the Israelite king.
And then what happened?
I think they died, except this one guy who was half Israelite, half something else.
Okay. They died during war, or they just died?
No, he got killed by that one guy.
Gideon?
Gideon's son. All of Gideon's sons
got killed.
By like his half son or something. Or it's his son, but it's like half brother to everybody else.
I see. So they fought each other?
Yes.
The brothers fought each other?
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of tells you, like, you need to be wise, right?
Yes.
The judges should have ruled because they're more
wise. I mean, the judges should rule not because they're wise, but because it's God appointed. Yeah.
Also, so they didn't rule? The judges didn't rule?
Yeah, they didn't get to rule, you could say. Then the men of Israel said to Gideon, "Rule thou over us, both thou and thy son, and thy son's sons also, for thou hast diverted from the land of Midian." And Gideon said to them, "I will not rule over you, neither shall my son rule over the Lord. The Lord shall rule over you." And Gideon said to them, "I would desire or request that you give me every man the earrings of his prey, etc., etc." So he says he doesn't want to rule, and he says he doesn't want his children to rule over them. So this is Judges chapter 8. And the country was in quietness 40 years in the days of Gideon. And Jerubbaal, the son of Joash, went and dwelled in his own house. And Gideon had 70 sons of his body. So he had 70 sons, for he had many wives. And his concubine was in Shechem. She also bore him a son whose name was Abimelech. And Gideon, the son of Joash, died in good old age and was buried in the sepulchre of Joash, his father. And it came to pass, as soon as Gideon was dead, that the children of Israel turned again and went whoring after Baalim and Baal-berith, their god. And the children of Israel remembered not the Lord their God, and neither showed kindness to the house of Jerubbaal, namely Gideon, according to all the goodness which he had showed Israel. And then in chapter 9, then it describes that Jerubbaal got,
Abimelech.
Yeah, Abimelech. I think he's the guy that kills everybody. Let me see.
He sounds familiar.
I mean, it's because everybody has a similar name.
Oh.
So Abraham meets this guy named Abimelech.
Okay.
Yeah, everybody kind of has like. There's, in fact, in the Bible, there's a guy named Eden. So unless you specify like we're talking about Eden as in like the Garden of Eden, like there's a guy named Eden in the Bible. Here it is. Yeah, Shechem and Abimelech fall. When Abimelech had reigned 3 years over Israel. Yeah, so Abimelech killed the sons of the other sons of Gideon. And then he was ruling over the people. Anyway. So yeah, this is the thing. So this doesn't mention like the later stories where all the judges, not all of them, but a lot of them end up falling from their, work, you can say.
Why?
They did good work.
What do you mean fall? Like they
so Gideon, so if Gideon,
they got tempted, or they went wrong way, or
very wrong way because of they're unable to restrain their desires.
With the judges.
Yeah. I mean, not all of them. So Deborah wasn't like that. Yeah. But so for instance, Gideon, he married like a lot of concubines, but he's a judge. He's not supposed to be doing that.
Gideon's a judge?
Yeah. That's why his name is listed here. It's because he's a judge.
So it doesn't mention it.
No, he is. Anytime in the book of Judges, somebody saves Israel from the Canaanites, that person saves them because God chose him to be a judge. So Gideon was a judge. Samson was a judge.
Oh,
Samuel was the last judge.
really?
Mhm.
How come it doesn't mention it?
I mean, it doesn't mention it here, but it mentions it in the Bible.
Why do you think it doesn't mention it? Because that would have been a nice.
I mean,
connection.
everybody being mentioned here is a judge right now,
Oh,
except Delilah.
okay.
Yeah.
Gideon was a-
So he wasn't supposed to have all these concubines and stuff,
Mm.
but he did, and then that's where the fight came from among each other, like who's gonna rule over Israel, and then this guy named Abimelech was like,
sons.
yeah, he had 70, right?
No, that's too much.
But yeah, those are things we're gonna talk about in the sermons, because this is just to get us familiar with like the names of those people that are coming up. After the death of Gideon, who led the Israelites to victory against the Midianites, the Israelites once again turned away from worshiping God. And you can see now it's a cycle, right? The judges save Israel, and then the Israelites, they get comfortable, so they start worshiping the other gods instead of, depending on the only God that saved them. He punished them by allowing their lands to be invaded by a new enemy, the Philistines. God let these invaders stay for 40 years before sending Israel a new champion. An angel of God visited a man named Manoah and told him that his wife would give birth to a son. The child will be a Nazarite, someone set apart as God's servant for birth. That means somebody who doesn't cut their hair. They don't touch dead things. Like it's listed in Leviticus, I think, what a Nazarite is.
Nazarite. Oh, let's see. Not cutting hair is one of them.
Yeah, not drinking wine, not touching dead things. What else? I think those are the three main ones.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and his hair should never be cut. The child's name was Samson.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see.
Got it.
Yeah, I forgot what the exact listing was, but it's in the Pentateuch,
Mm-hmm.
and it's somebody that's because of a vow they made to God or their parents made to God. They're set apart from the rest of the Israelites, and they have to live this monkish life.
Oh.
Growing up, Samson's life was dedicated to God's service from birth. He grew tall and strong. His hair grew longer and longer. One day, Samson saw a young Philistine woman. He fell in love with her. Oh, and the lion is no match for Samson.
Oh, here it is. Nazarenites were not allowed to cut their hair, drink alcohol, or touch a dead body. On his way to propose marriage to the Philistine woman, Samson was attacked by a lion. God gave Samson the strength to kill the lion with his bare hands. Samson then visited the woman, who agreed to be his wife.
And there's another.
Was that okay? Was that marriage okay?
No, it's not okay because the Israelites are only. First, I don't think Nazarites are allowed to marry. Is the first thing, but maybe they are. I don't know. I forget. It was a long time ago, but if they're gonna marry, they're supposed to marry within the Israel tribe, and particularly within their own tribe.
Got it.
But he went out of bounds. He transgressed that to marry the Philistine.
Got it. Chapter 14, verse 14. Out of the eater, something to eat, out of the strong, something sweet. At his wedding, Samson asks the Philistine guest this riddle, the answer to which is honey from a lion. Some of the Philistines threaten Samson's wife to get her to tell them the answer. When Samson finds out that she has told them, he angrily do. Okay. Some of the Philistines threaten Samson's wife to get her to tell them the answer. When Samson finds out that she has told them, he angrily divorces her. Okay, so Philistine, the wife told the answer.
Yeah, so her name's Delilah. She asked Samson like, "Oh, you hate me so much? Don't you hate? You want me to be scorned by my people? You're not telling me the answer." And Samson's like, "All right, I'll tell you the answer." Right? And then she went to the Philistines and told them, and there was like a bet, like if you can't give it to me, then I get all your wealth or something like that.
Out of the eater, something to eat, out of the strong.
Oh, this is the same lion that maybe it wasn't the same lion. He just noticed that there was, so he's not supposed to be touching the dead body.
Yeah.
But he saw a dead lion, and I think it was the lion that he killed before. Maybe it wasn't, but I think it was.
Eating the honey. Returning to marry the Philistine woman, some days later, Samson found that bees had nested in the lion's carcass and had made honey. He knelt down to eat some of the honey, even though this meant touching a dead body, a forbidden act for a Nazarite. Later, at his wedding feast, Samson challenged the Philistines to answer a riddle. They're baffled and threatened Samson's new wife so that she would tell them the answer. I got it. It
Mhm.
makes sense. So
Because he sees this,
out
he
of
was
the eater, something to eat. Out of the strong, something sweet. The answer is honey. Interesting.
and it would have made more sense in the Hebrew, whatever it was.
Yeah, whatever it is.
Yeah, it's kind of like when we go like, what's black and blue and like red all over, whatever it is. It's that kind of like a.
That Philistine wife is not Delilah. Delilah is something else, huh?
I think it is Delilah. That was Delilah, the Philistine woman.
But he divorced her.
Kind of.
That's what it says here.
Yeah, not. I'm not
He had killed
sure.
them. He angrily divorces her.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it can be. Let me see. Judges 14.
Israelites' mighty champion Samson fell in love with a beautiful woman named Delilah. I think it's different. Why wouldn't they mention the Philistine woman in the beginning?
Oh, here it is. Samson's wife was given to his companion, whom he had used as his friend. So it wasn't. I don't think it was.
Samson Delilah, right?
Yeah, it's not a divorce. I think.
But he didn't go.
She
through.
cheated, huh?
But he didn't go through with the marriage.
I think. I don't know if he didn't go through with the marriage. Actually, I think he did. Yeah, so he did marry her, but she was given to somebody else by her parents. And I guess the book here considers that a divorce. But I mean, maybe technically it's a divorce, but it's her father who gave her to the Philistines. Just took her out of like Samson's and then just like, you marry this other person.
Right. The Israelites' mighty champion Samson fell in love with a beautiful woman named Delilah.
Yeah, so maybe
Samson was known for his strength, which he had used to kill thousands of Philistines. When the Philistine leaders learned that Samson loved Delilah, they offered her a huge amount of silver to find out the secret of his strength. 3 times Delilah asked Samson to reveal.
Oh yeah, it's a different woman. Yeah, it's a different woman.
But Samson teased her by making up lies.
Mm-hmm.
I remember it was something else or something else.
Yeah, and then so yeah, he was like, he said if you tie my hands, then I'll be powerless.
Yeah.
And then while he was sleeping, she tied his hands, and the Philistine tried to kill him, and then he broke out of the bonds or whatever, and just like beat those guys with like
So what he should have known at that point?
The woman?
No, that he's being betrayed. No.
I mean, yeah, but so here you could say the point is when your heart's in a state of like disorder, which is what Samson's heart is in, then you can't really know like what's going on.
Right. Makes sense.
And that's sort of like happened to Samson is he's a Nazarite and he already broke 2 of his. He's not supposed to drink alcohol. He's not supposed to touch the body.
Where's the alcohol?
In marriage, I think, right?
I see.
Let me see.
Ah, interesting. Okay. So Samson teased her by making up lies. Finally, he admitted that he drew his strength from his long hair, which he had never cut.
And did you see the one from the Sight and Sound? That was the correct version. Here, it's like Samson's hair is not that long, but in Sight and Sound, it was like braided all the way down to his foot.
Right, because he can't cut it.
Right.
No.
For his youth.
I did not watch Samson.
Oh.
I think I should.
Yeah. It's very accurate.
I think
in his depiction.
That's one I did not watch.
Yeah. But yeah, he had like this braided hair.
Right.
It was huge, but it was like he looked like, Sonic the Hedgehog. It was braided like,
He can't cut it.
Yeah.
Finally, he admitted that he drew his strength from his long hair, which he had never cut. Delilah sent a message to the Philistine leaders revealing something.
Oh, it's past 9. Do you want to go on or?
No, I should get back.
Okay.
This story I know.